Okay, this is just a little follow-up to the Scheherazade video. I'm still listening to it at a quiet volume. And I'm just thinking that the really good feature with these Ampex amps and the Lancelot speakers is that you can listen to them quietly as well. In the YouTube video before and the others, I showed them at louder volumes because I noticed that this camera doesn't pick up much when you record at a low level, so then it's not really representative of anything, and it's not worthwhile to listen to. But when you are listening to them and you think that, oh, before we heard that and it had peaks above 110 dB, then it probably just kills your neighbors, and if you do that all day, then you probably damage your ears. So I want something that can play quietly, and actually they can play quietly too. And I would say that this is an even bigger feat than playing loud, because normally when you listen to at this volume, you hear what is my voice, what's the level. This is like a normal speaking level, and you can hear that the music is below that. And listening at this level, I still have the feeling that I'm at the concert hall. And then they're just playing quieter, but there's the violinist, I can point at him, but even nicer is that I can hear the tone of the violin. I still get the dynamic contrast. You hear that now it's like barely audible, and when they go to forte, it still has that dynamic contrast. When you have most systems, most speakers, most amps, when you play them quietly, then dynamics is completely gone. So now you hear it's picking up, and there's a lot of dynamic contrast between the quiet parts and the loud parts, even here. And this is really, really hard to do. And to make this happen, you need high efficiency speakers. If you have low efficiency speakers and you turn the volume down, then what happens is that the dynamics gets really, really compressed, and it doesn't help if you have like a 1000 watts amplifier. It just makes the sound fuller, but the dynamics stays compressed, because it's the speaker that determines the dynamic range of your recording. If you are listening at a certain dB level, at that level, your driver, if it's like, for example, let's say 100 dB efficient, and let's compare it to an 88 dB efficient speaker. So between these two, there's a 12 dB efficiency difference, which means the more efficient requires 4 times less power to work, or it also means that it's 4 times more efficient. So it means that it behaves 4 times less as a resistor, and if it receives a certain amount of energy, it opens up 4 times more information from that packet compared to a relatively low sensitivity speaker. And that's why if you want realistic dynamic range, even if you're listening at a quiet level, you need high efficiency speaker, because they have the working range, a large working range with dynamics. And that large working range, that wide dynamic handling, stays even if you listen to them at very quiet or just moderate levels. So you don't need to max them out. Of course, if you listen to them at high volumes, then the perceived dynamic range is just gigantic. It goes from a soft, almost whisper quiet sounds to extremely loud, much louder than we can shout or scream. And the thing is that the records contain that information. And when we heard now this Scheherazade, I think probably even on the recording it comes through that there was the tape hiss that was really audible, and the tape hiss was kind of loud, but it really doesn't subtract from the listening experience, because with these speakers the tape hiss and pops and clicks from the record are completely different from the music. And when there's a pop or there's a hiss, it sounds separate in space. It's like here there's a pop, pick, and when you have a violin here or the trumpet here, they are unaffected entirely by the pops and clicks. And when you have a lesser system that does not have this resolving ability, then the pops and clicks and tape hiss just meshes up with the music, and that's really bothersome, because then you cannot hear the violin, you cannot hear the singing clearly. It's spotted with those noises. But when you have a clean setup that can provide a high detail retrieval, then this does not become an issue, because they live in separate worlds. So the tape hiss, the surface noise, the scratches is completely different from the music. It to the ear, actual ears of the listener, to my ears, these pops and clicks and hiss, it felt as if I have a fireplace, a quiet fireplace running, and I'm also at the orchestra, and in the background, maybe it's cold outside, so they lit up some fire to keep us warm. It gives like a cozy, wintry feeling to the whole performance. And one more thing to mention here about vinyl is that vinyl's dynamic range is stupendously high, and they are saying that, of course, CD and digital. Let's just show off my PS audio deck. The digital has like such high dynamic range. It's like above 100 and so dB above the noise floor. But the thing is that for digital, the dynamic range is really limited, and because when they give you a number, that it means that that's the absolute possibly max dynamic range, from smallest signal to the biggest signal, and below that range there is nothing, so you cannot hear any information below their 0 dB level. And of course that's so low that it doesn't bother us, but when you go lower in the dynamic range, that's when your resolution gets really choppy. So the quieter you play digital, the worse its quality gets. This doesn't happen with analog, and there you get the quite opposite phenomena. There is a certain background hiss and the tape hiss that we heard, but you can hear easily 30-40 dB below the tape hiss. So when they give you let's say a 65 dB dynamic range for vinyl, or maybe like a 70 dB for a 45 RPM, that doesn't mean that you have 65 dB and then you have 110 dB for digital, therefore digital is king. But it means that when you hit 0 dB here, you can still hear below that noise floor 30-40 dB lower. So add 40 to 70 and then you get 110 dB dynamic range easily, or even higher for 45 RPM. We were listening to regular 33 RPM now, and yeah, so I think the quietest sounds and details were easily down to 30 dB level or even a little lower, and the highest were about 115, so that gives us 85 dB at least, the dynamic range that we heard, or even more, because we also have to factor into account that even though like the quietest passages that we heard were around 30 dB, but that was not the bottom line. So there was a violin there, and you could still hear that it's playing quietly. So it means that it's like down to the 20 dBs level. So the dynamic range, we heard like here a 2 dynamic range of at least 90 dB or so from vinyl, and from digital. Now the difference doesn't seem so much between the two. So it means that basically if you have a really good analog source, then you can get a ton of information out of it, and your dynamic range is huge. And in fact it has a great advantage over digital because of the noise floor, because the brain requires a certain noise level to make sense of the information you are hearing. And in effect that tape hiss that gives a bonus for a recording, because that helps your brain to factor in what was the original recording volume of the music. And for digital there is no tape hiss, no background noise that is audible to the ear. So with digital we can't gauge what is the true volume of what we are hearing. That's why digital tends to sound so fake at times, and that's why we can pick up right away that we are listening to digital, because there's something very unnatural to it. Thank you for checking in, and if you like, please like.